Good evening. My name is Michelle Torbert, and I am board chair of the Prader-Willi Syndrome Association Board of Directors. I'd like to read to you this evening The Christmas Wreath. It is one of my daughter Leslie's favorite Christmas books. I hope you enjoy it too. The Christmas Wreath. The elves' work was done for the year, and they were tired. They were too tired to put up their own tree on Christmas Eve. They knew Santa would be disappointed when he returned, but they had barely finished the last sleigh load of toys. How about a wreath? Yawned Chief Elf. The truck-making elf just snored. The doll maker tucked a doll pillow under her head and sighed. The other elves blinked and shrugged. The last few nights they had even made toys in their dreams. Chief Elf gathered his last bit of energy to make a wreath from scraps of a workshop materials, pine boughs, a berry or two, and a leftover candy cane. Even the wreath looked really tired. As he hung the wreath on the workshop door, Chief Elf said to himself, "Oh well, it's the thought that counts." Late that night, a hungry polar bear smelled the pine boughs and peppermint and thought of food. She followed the scent to the door where the wreath was hanging. As the polar bear rose up on her hind legs to take the candy cane, she bumped the wreath, which fell off its hook and slipped over her head. A very surprised polar bear now wore a wreath necklace. She tried to get it off, but the more she wiggled and shook, the tighter it became. Perhaps she thought it would come off in the world of ice and water. She lumbered across the ice and dove to the bottom of the bay, through golden kelp and glistening seaweed. Still, the wreath did not come off. Instead, it collected strands of seaweed and sea flowers, and small silver fish got tangled in the bow. Each time she came out of the water to breathe, the Arctic air froze the water on the wreath. Layers of ice were added, trapping underwater sea life in each layer. Soon the polar bear grew tired. She climbed slowly onto the frozen icy shore to rest. In the moonlight, shafts of green and blue and silver and gold reflected off the wreath. The polar bear would have been proud of her necklace if she knew how beautiful it now was. But she had to get it off. It was so heavy. She tried to snag it on a jagged rock and then tried to get it off on a fence post in the reindeer yard. Nothing worked. In desperation, she went back to the workshop door and stretched up, scratching the wreath against the door. Remarkably, the hook that Chief Elf had used caught the ice on the wreath, and the polar bear was free. She fled happily, rid of her icy necklace at last. Up above, Santa and his sleigh and reindeer were nearing home. Below, they saw dazzling rays of colors that shone like beacons to guide his way. As Santa and the reindeer drew closer to the workshop, they stared in wonder at what they saw. On the workshop door hung a wreath, wrapped in ice crystals, shimmering and glittering in the moonlight. The familiar jingle of reindeer bells woke the elves. They were still half asleep as they stumbled out to greet Santa. They too were amazed to see the wondrous creation on their workshop door. The elves looked at each other in surprise when Santa thanked them for the beautiful wreath. They created a jewel-like Christmas wreath. An ice sculpture? How and when had that happened? The chief elf stroked his beard. How had his tired wreath become so glorious, he wondered. He remembered putting out a scraggly little, mess. He smiled as he gazed at the icy beauty, wondering about miracles and Christmas Eve. Merry Christmas.